When
Who we got in here for this?
I got a full
All
crew of
right,
lads and ladettes.
all right. So we about to taking an excerpt. Been a minute. Taking an excerpt here from "100 Authors Against Einstein." We come across the writing of Mr. Dr. Arvid Rudolf from St. Paul, Minnesota, in the United States. Titles his excerpt "Einsteinism: Its Fallacies and Frauds," and he says. Classical relativity is true, but Einsteinism is false. Therefore, the term relativity should not be associated with Einsteinism. The modern perversion of true relativity should be labeled Einsteinism in order to avoid calumny against sane scientists and sound science, which deals with facts and not with mathematical fiction. Coming out swinging out the gate. All right, what you got to say? Its principal fallacies. Number one, the absolute velocity of light fallacy. Einstein's postulate that the velocity of light is absolute is utterly false. Postulating one absolute against the relativities destroys relativity as a true generalization. Einstein's first paper, 1905, is mathematically wrong because he derives a spherical wavefront instead of an ellipsoidal one from his light source. I haven't heard that one yet.
Unlucky, dude.
Every Everything that moves, including light, has a relative and not an absolute velocity in reference to an observer. If light is excluded from this law, then the universality of law becomes a misnomer. Facts contradict Einstein's postulate. He's just like, look, dude, it's not constant. Just dot. It's, uh, okay. Number two, the Fitzgerald-Lorentz contraction fallacy. The Fitzgerald-Lorentz contraction hypothesis is pure mathematical fiction, which is not supported by any known and observable fact. It was invented to account for the alleged negative result in the Michelson-Morley interferometer experiment. Look at that word, alleged negative. Look, bro. I mean, they already
Mhm.
saying this. If the time is the same for both paths in the interferometer, then this result is due to the action of external components in space and not to an alleged shrinkage in an interferometer arm. If a real shrinkage takes place, then according to true science, it can be measured. This alleged shrinkage has never been measured, therefore, it is pure fiction. If a difference exists in the time of the two paths, then relative motion between the Earth and the ether is a fact. In either
Classic.
case, Einstein's postulate of the absolute velocity of light crumbles into nothingness. Short and sweet, I like it. Number three, the principle of equivalence fallacy. Einsteinism asserts the equivalence of acceleration and gravitation. In other words, he maintains that an effect, acceleration, is equivalent to its cause, gravitation. This contention is a gross absurdity. The space time fallacy. Einsteinism holds that real space-time is one, and that space as well as time are artificial mental products. Wow. This is a fallacy. The truth is that although space and time are always associated in this phenomenal world of action, nevertheless, space differs so fundamentally from time that a oneness cannot be established. On the contrary, a dualism between the two is essential to the proper understanding of physical action. Space is reversible. Time is not reversible. Space is static. Time is dynamic. Together, they describe action, which involves both position and a change of position. Time cannot, by Einsteinian or any other form of alchemy, be transmuted into true space as a coordinate thereof. The fictitious mathematical device, known as the square root of -1, is impotent to transform a reality into a different reality. Huh. The curved space fallacy. Matter can only affect other matter. It cannot produce changes in principles and laws. Space and time are not matter. Therefore, the presence of matter in space time cannot change the nature of space and time. Space is not a material thing which can close like the walls of a box. It is not curved, because curvature pertains only to material objects existing in space. Consequently, space is not limited and enveloping. Space is an elemental basic, like a cosmic principle, an unending like principle, because its applications are unlimited. Here we go, number six. Creation of space and time by the observer, a fallacy. Einsteinism contends that man makes space and time by using measuring rods and clocks. This is mere sophistry. That which is measured exists before the appearance of the one who measures it. Space and time do not come into being by the act of measuring.
So obvious when you say it out loud.
On the contrary, measurement is a quantitative appreciation of the amount of a reality. Since space and time are elemental realities, all normal minds can form the same conclusions concerning their nature.
Man, well said.
Uh, oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Dude, the Fitzgerald
Uh,
Lorentz was just the ultimate like 9-year-old boy saying that a ghost did it.
Number seven, mathematical calculations determine the nature of space and time, a fallacy. Despite allegations to the contrary, Einsteinism maintains in practice that the character of space and time is determined by mathematical speculation. The fallacy involved in this practice is at once apparent. The true function of mathematics is to describe phenomena accurately and concisely. Mathematics cannot create anything, not even four or n dimensional spaces. Dude, it's so oh my gosh. I mean, this dude's saying like 100 years before us what we be saying all the time. That's hilarious. Number eight, reference mollusk and unitary field conceptions, fabrications of the imagination having no contact with reality. Einstein's Gaussian reference mollusk, like the creature from which it was named, consists principally of a shell. Within the shell, there is nothing but a vain hope that the device will function. Having no contact with reality, the mollusk cannot lift, even itself, out of the bog of inconsistencies which gave it birth. The same criticism applies to Einstein's latest speculative product, the unitary field, as set forth in Zur Einheitlichkeitsfeldtheorie, 1929. As a generalization, it generalizes away every vestige of reality and creates a mathematical dust which totally blinds the Einsteinian dupes. Number nine, alleged observational proofs, either worthless or fundamentally inconclusive. A. Deflection of light. The plates were chosen in order to confirm the hypothesis of Einstein. Those chosen failed to do so by a percent. Those chosen failed to do so by a percent, not permissible in sound and honest scientific work. Furthermore, Einstein does not include refraction due to the sun's gaseous atmosphere. Oh, he's talking about the plates that you did that presentation on, Alan. He's talking about the plates.
Yeah.
You know about the
Yep.
gravitational lenses of the sun.
Yep. Yep. And that guy,
Wow.
Silberstein pointed out the refractive conditions based on the, atmospheric conditions of like whatever the sun is, them not accounting
We're
for
not.
it. We're not being accounted
Yeah,
for. He pointed that out
that'd
at
be
the meeting that
way
they
bigger.
announced it out. Yeah, dude, so insane.
That's crazy. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna pretend refraction doesn't exist on the sun, and then we're gonna take this thing that's like a billionth of the magnitude of that, and say that that's what's doing all of this. And yeah, here's the plates
Yeah.
that we chose 4 out of 32.
Well, and
Um,
also, and remember, not only the deflection too, there was supposed to be a certain amount of spectral shift that was to be observed. So they had two dudes doing spectral readings at the time too, and those lines didn't correspond to any sort of gravitational shifting. There was no like additional shift in the spectrum.
yeah. B. Rotation of the plane of the planet Mercury. Einstein was forced to amputate his theory in order to magically unfold Gerber's Newtonian formula, which he used without acknowledgement to make this calculation. Therefore, the motion of the plane of Mercury proves the correctness of Gerber's Newtonian computation, but not the truth of Einsteinism. We're gonna have to look into this. Hold on. He's talking about the
I, dude,
Mercury perihelion shift, or
mm-hmm. Dude, you want to know about Gerber's equations and stuff? I got all that. I know all about your boy Gerby.
let's go over that when we finish this guy's thing,
All right.
because I haven't heard this. C. Displacement of the spectral lines. Observations concerning the line shift toward the red are inconclusive. The careful work of Burns, Curtis, Meggers, and others flatly contradict the claims of Einstein. A different theory than that of Einstein may be confirmed by observation, thus invalidating invalidating its claim to uniqueness in regard to spectral lines. This also holds for the Shapley effect. 10.
Yeah,
Einsteinism,
we'll
a
have to look into
speculative
that too after after we do the Gerber stuff.
a, s- okay, a speculative network of mutual contradictions. Since Einsteinism was spun out of fictitious and inconsistent fibers, the entire fabric is filled with mutual contradictions. In 1911, Einstein's theory produced a deflection of light equal to 0.83 seconds of arc. In 1918, he found that the deflection was 1.7 seconds of arc. The latter is practically 2 times the former. Einstein makes no apologies or explanations concerning these glaring mutual contradictions. Thus, they remain in his work as enduring monuments of the most colossal scientific hoax of all times. Don't know about that either. That's wild. In the year 1919, Einstein boldly announced that there is no ether. But in his Leiden lecture, May 5th, 1920, he changed his mind and tried to substitute a mathematical continuum for a real medium. But light waves cannot be made out of X's and Y's. uh, Einstein, in his special theory, asserts that the velocity of light is the same in all directions in space, irrespective of the velocity of its source and the velocity of the observer. But in his general theory, he repudiates this alleged law and boldly maintains that it does not hold in a gravitational field like that of the sun. Mutually contradictory laws are vitally essential in Einstein's ridiculous structure.
Amen.
11. Aesthetic claims and assumptions concerning uniqueness false. In science, only that which is true can justly claim to be beautiful. Therefore, since Einsteinism is false, it is not beautiful. All of Einstein's problems can be solved without recourse to his fantastic mathematical speculations. Consequently, the argument that his theories are true because they are alleged to be unique falls to the ground. Alleged. The frauds of Einsteinism. 1. Bombastic and fraudulent advertising. When Einsteinism swept the world like a cataclysmic tidal wave, I styled Einstein as the Barnum of science on account of the fraudulent claims and the bombastic advertising of his vagaries. Since there has been no abatement in this unscientific propaganda, the charge is still justified. 2. It is merely a mathematical speculation. His entire structure is based not upon facts, but on mathematical speculations which outdo the quibbles and sophistries of the unbridled schoolmen. 3. The Nobel Premium. Einstein was awarded the Nobel Premium on his law dealing with the photoelectric effect. This law had previously been proved to be false by the research work of the American physicist R.A. Millikan. See his work, quote unquote, The Electron, page 230, edition of 1917. I take back what I said. I want to see this first.
Yep. I bookmarked it.
Dr. O.E. Weston of Sweden exposed this fraud. By Einstein's unwarranted lecture on the subject, relativity, which violated the rules of the Nobel Premium Directorate, the world was led to believe that the Nobel Directorate had placed its approval on Einsteinism as a sound and experimentally demonstrated theory. But the Nobel Directorate, in their reward, specifically stated that this was not the fact. Every recipient of a Nobel Premium is required by the Directorate to lecture within a specified time on the subject which was the basis of the award. In Einstein's case, the award was not for relativity, but for his fallacious law of the photoelectric effect. Wow. 4. The plagiarisms of Einstein. A. Minkowski and Einstein adopted but distorted the original idea of Melchior Palagi, the great Hungarian philosopher, concerning time as a dimension in conjunction with space. Palagi also introduced the term square root of -1 in conjunction with time. Pelagi's work was published in 1901. Einstein's first paper bears the date 1905. Minkowski's first paper appeared in 1907. Pelagi, however, did not teach the oneness of space and time, nor did he ever say that the length of a measuring rod depended upon the time of its observation. It should be noted that Einstein and Pelagi were professors at the same university, that is, at the German University at Prague. B. Einstein's formula of 1911 for the deflection of light is the same in substance as that of Johann Georg von Soldner of 1801. Soldner's formula was based upon the Newtonian celestial mechanics of Laplace. Despite the claims of Dr. Robert Trumpler, I have shown that Soldner's use of 2G instead of G is justifiable. C. Paul Gerber's formula of 1898 was used by Einstein in 1913 in order to determine the amount of rotation of the plane of the planet Mercury. So he just used this guy's formula and then
Dude,
said, "Yep, I did
one
it
to
with
one. It's
relativity."
insane.
Wow. D. The present writer, in the year 1903, outlined a unitary field concept involving all types of force in a lecture entitled The Atom of Electrochemistry, which was delivered before the American Electrochemical Society. And in the year 1913, I coined the hyphenated expression space-time, which was copyrighted in 1915 in conjunction with my lecture delivered at the Kansas State Agricultural College and the University of Kansas, entitled "The Space-Time Potential: a new concept of gravitation and electricity." Einstein's reference mollusk was built upon the plan of my potential zone system, with this important difference that my reference zone was constructed from facts and was applied to actual physical determinations, whereas Einstein's mollusk is merely a mythical structure which has no contact with reality. My space-time kinematrix of 1923 includes all types of activity: gravitational, electrical, thermal, mechanical, etc. This also was used in definite determinations. Einstein's unitary field of 1929, a piece of pure mathematical fiction, reveals no actual application for the reason that it is not based upon facts but upon fallaciously premised mathematical speculations. Oh, he threw that stuff in at the end, like, oh, by the way, who is this guy? Dr. Arvid Rudolf. I had to look this man up. All right, what was that thing about Millikan? You gave a reference to Millikan, 1917, disproving the photoelectric effect. Like, I've never heard of that.
Check main chat.
Oh, it's in the chat?
Check main chat. I haven't checked yet, but there's the.
Hey, quick
Oh, yeah.
interruption, LNG and piezo. Everything piezo is reading is so fascinating. I think we need to make like an episode on your YouTube, LNG, like an hour of piezo reading all this. I know I want to hear all this again. And
Well,
I'm
it's,
puttering around doing things, so I can't really read along, but
well, it's a good
like
thing I've been
if it
recording the whole time, Lily.
Oh yeah. I mean, no, I was just gonna say, like, if we make an episode out of it and put it on your YouTube, I think the whole community is gonna love hearing about this, and it'll be I mean, just exactly what PSO is doing right now, just reading it and having it on the screen, you know? Anyways, it's great stuff. I'm so enjoying it. Wow. Continue, PSO, sorry.
Well, that was it. That was it. I'm asking ChatGPT to help me find this work. It says it's investigating potential site blockages and limited access or whatever. So Robert Millikan had a 1917 book called The Electron: Its Isolation and Measurement and the Determination of Some of Its Properties. Uh, uh, hmm. Page 230. Let's see.
Yo, I got it. It's right here. And then he wants us to go to page
230.
230. I'll just download the fucking thing. Hang on a second.
Okay.
230.
Says so. I'm looking right here. And it says
Super hard to read.
actually 229 objections to an ether string theory. Hold on a second. Let me here's a link. Let me drop it. Try this. Go to page 229.
There we go. This is a nice
Heading. Oh, nice. Nice. That's a better one. It's
Yep.
better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool cover.
Mm-hmm.
Have to do some investigation. Because Milliken's the one that did the oil drop experiment.
Mm-hmm. God damn it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is when he's talking about his oil drop experiment, how he's arguing against I'm not sure what he means by the ether string theory, but
Oh, this might not even be the ether thing. Ether thing. Yeah,
did you find it?
ether string theory. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, scroll up a little bit. No, a little bit further down, further down. It's number 5. So you're in 2, 3, yeah. No, no, no. This is not. You're. What page are you on?
I don't know.
You should be on page 229.
Okay. Mm.
Does it not have a page 229 in there?
No. I only go up to page 150. So I don't know what this
Weird.
is then. This must
Can
be
you
a
search? Can
different.
you search? Can you search for objections to an ether? Will let you control F.
Yeah. Nope, nothing.
Can you type experiments and just see if that pops up? Okay. So
Objections to
yo,
an ether string theory.
that's it. It's 6 in this for some reason instead of 5. Yours
Hmm.
is different than mine.
Hmm.
Yeah, yours is written completely differently. Oh well, let's check this then. Okay. In spite of the credentials which have just been presented for Einstein's equation, the essentially corpuscular theory out of which he got it has not yet met with general acceptance even by physicists of Bohr's type. There seems to be no possibility at present of bringing it into harmony with a whole group of well-established facts of physics. The recent practically complete bridging of the gap between X-rays and light, as well as that between heat waves and wireless waves, with the perfectly continuous passage of the latter wireless waves over into static electrical fields, appears to demand that if we attempt to interpret high frequency electromagnetic waves, X rays, and lights in terms of undulatory quote unquote darts of light, we also interpret wireless waves in the same way, and this in turn requires us to use a similar mechanism in the interpretation of static electrical fields. This brings us back to Thomson's ether string theory, which seems to be a necessary part of Einstein's conception if it is to have any physical basis whatsoever. Two very potent objections, however, may be urged against all forms of ether string theory. The first is that no one has ever yet been able to show that such a theory can predict any one of the facts of interference. The second is that there is direct positive evidence against the view that the ether possesses a fibrous structure. But I think the ether is like a web of strings. For if a static electrical field has a fibrous structure, as postulated by any form of ether string theory, each unit of positive electricity being the origin and each unit of negative electricity the termination of a Faraday tube, then the force acting on one single electron between the plates of an air condenser cannot possibly vary continuously with the potential difference between the plates. Now, in the oil drop experiments, we actually study the behavior in such an electric field of one single isolated electron, and we find over the widest limits exact proportionality between the field strength and the force acting on the electron, as measured by the velocity with which the oil drop to which it is attached is dragged through the air. When we maintain the field constant and vary the charge on the drop, the granular structure of electricity is proved by the discontinuous changes in the velocity. But when we maintain the charge constant and vary the field, the lack of discontinuous change in the velocity disproves the contention of a fibrous structure in the field, unless the assumption be made that there are an enormous number of ether strings ending in one electron. Such an assumption takes most of the virtue out of an ether string theory. So I'm not sure what the ether string theory is. It sounds like they're trying to say that ether is like a giant web of like little strings of ether, just as fluid.
Yeah, I've
But
never heard of
he's
it.
he's saying that the only way you can match up our observations of what appear to be like discrete values for electrons' properties is if there are multiple ether strings ending in one electron. But that would only mean that an ether string has to be smaller than an electron, which would necessarily mean that there would be many of them. Like, dude, if there are ether strings, they're much smaller than electrons, homie. Either way, I'll keep reading. I don't know what the ether string theory is anyway, so I'm not going to try to defend it. And I don't know what it is, but that's just what jumps out at me. Like, if it's what I'm thinking he's saying, there's ether strings ending in an electron. Well, there are certainly more than one because they would be much smaller than the electron. Despite then the apparently complete success of the Einstein equation, the physical theory of which it was designed to be the symbolic expression is thus far so irreconcilable with the whole group of well established facts that some of the most penetrating of modern physicists cannot as yet accept it. And we are somewhat in the position of having built a very perfect structure and then knocked out entirely the underpinning without causing the building to fall. It stands complete and apparently well tested, but without any visible means of support. These supports must obviously exist, and the most fascinating problem of modern physics is to find them. Experiment has outrun theory, or, better, guided by unacceptable theory, it has discovered relationships which seem to be of the greatest interest and importance, but the reasons for them are as yet not at all understood. So, what did he say that Millikan said? Einstein was awarded the Nobel Premium on his law dealing with the photoelectric effect. This law had previously been proved to be false by the research work of the American physicist R.A. Millikan. See his work, The Electron, page 230, edition of 1917. Do you have the 1917 edition? I wonder which edition I have.
I'll see if I can whip it up.
Hold on, I'm gonna go to page one and see if I can see what edition I have. Yeah, I've got the 1917 edition.
Oh, perfect. Well, I don't have to do anything then.
August 1917. Yeah. So here, mine is very similar to yours. Um, However, it's a little bit different. um,
Where in here did he
at page
falsify Einstein's theory of little tiny projectile bullets?
well, he says despite then the apparently complete success of the Einstein equation, the physical theory of which it was designed to be the symbolic expression is found so untenable that Einstein himself, I believe, no longer holds to it, and we are in the position
Ah.
of having built a very perfect structure and then knocked out entirely the underpinning without causing the building to fall. Um,
Rip.
so he says that the experiment has outrun the theory. or better yet, guided by erroneous theory, it has discovered relationships which seem to be of the greatest interest and importance, but the reasons for them are as yet not at all understood. Hmm. So I'm confused. I'm confused because this is in this 1917 edition. What is he suggesting is the structure of an electron? Hmm. Interesting. Well, okay. Very interesting. Hmm. The two fluid theory? Hold on. There's a subject index back here that's clickable. Interesting. Can I get this? Wait a second. Oh, he's talking about the views of. He's talking about electrical fluid. Huh. So he's basically saying that there appears to be a granular structure for electricity. In other words, like it holds discrete values, right? There are like quanta in what we call electrons or whatever, but without having a an established like physical explanation as to how or why. So he's like, we have this equation that holds true when we measure it, but we have no way, like the foundation of it is broken. We'd have no way of understanding like how or why it's like this.
Mm,
Interesting.
g-
Well, I mean,
gotcha.
now they just say that there's like virtual fields and
Yeah,
all
they
that
have a
stuff. So
completely bastardized physical interpretation of it based off of abstract math as the causal mechanism. As our boy said earlier, X's and Y's can't be the cause of it.
yeah, X's and Y's do not create light waves. Well, dude, it looks like they just gave up. Like they found all this stuff out in the 19 teens and like the first 2 3 decades, the first 20 25 years, 20 30 years of the 1900s. They found all this stuff out, and then they're trying their best to try to make like a physical explanation of it, and they fail to do so. And they're like, you know what? I guess there just is no physical explanation. Everything's just abstractions. It's just math. That's crazy, bro. This is insane.
Yeah.
Hmm. He's quoting Benjamin Franklin and stuff here. But particles of electrical fluid. Interesting. So, dude, he's combining the idea of particles and fluid here. Man, it seems like, it seems like to me, Alan, it seems like this is pointing to, if I may, a physical fluid whose material constants cause it to have such, you know, viscosity and surface tension, etc., that it has a smallest stable droplet size, which is an electron.
Mm.
even though that electron, that droplet size, doesn't exist as a little orb, because electrons are actually measured in a continuous fashion surrounding atoms, so that like the energy of an electron is dispersed continuously throughout the entire region in which an electron can be measured. So it turns into like a little fluid cloud instead of, you know, a droplet or a marble or something. They're not marbles. They were thinking that at this point, but this was pre Schrodinger and stuff as well. They're saying that an ether string theory couldn't explain interference, but interference is a function of waves. And I needed to know more about what they mean by an ether string theory. I've never even like read about. They don't teach any of the history, so I don't even know what they mean by that. I know ether theory,
Yeah,
but
I've
what does it
I've
mean by
never
ether
heard of
string?
it once in all the research I've done.
Well, from like 1880 to 1910, 1915, in that time, they were going super hard with fluid dynamics. Even before like 1860 to like 1920, there's like a bunch of fluid dynamics stuff happening. Remember? And then that kind of got like what it retconned or whatever you call it. Wait a second. Mm. This is interesting, dude. I kind of want to read this book. Dude, he'd be going through the history of all this stuff. Wow. Man. Why is electricity so cool, dude?
Oh,
Anyways,
oh, oh, oh. The ether string theory is regarding how Faraday and Maxwell and the boys considered lines of force as like strings.
oh. Oh.
Yeah, because as this is going through the thing, so it's got like they consider the ether as as an elastic solid, so C equals the square of the shear rigidity over the density, tell you like all the classic stuff, and then it's talking about how Faraday and Maxwell describe lines of force as strings.
Okay.
So electric and magnetic lines behave like
Of force.
elastic threads under tension. Energy is stored as tension in the ether. Maxwell used mechanical analogies, molecular vortices, or idle wheels to transmit stress along these lines, often drawn laterally as strings. So I think when he's talking about we can't explain the fringe lines, like that's such a weird or not weird, it's such an ambiguous term because you don't know if the person is referring to the actual measurements or the story that's told about the measurements. You know what I mean?
Which,
Because
which, which, I mean, he's talking about the phenomenon of interference in general, I think.
right, but
Mhm.
specifically, this dude's talking about to explain the Michelson-Morley results of interference.
You think?
Always.
Hmm.
It's always trying to rectify why the experiment that should have given a value of velocity gave a value of velocity that didn't correspond to what they needed, and or if they would just believe in the story of it giving like an actual zero value, because some people don't know that it gave a value that was smaller than what it was expected, and some people believe that it gave an actual zero.
Yeah, he saw he we read that just a second ago when I was reading the PDF, the myth or whatever, the fiction that it gave a null result or whatever word it was he used.
Okay, yeah. So they would predict a full value of motion relative to the ether for the ether string theory, because that's just motion relative to the ether. So he's saying that it wouldn't be able to explain why there is no velocity there, because the now accepted physics is that there's no velocity measured, when if you tried to use the ether string theory, you would predict a velocity.
I understand now. So now let me think about this. When he says, for if a static electrical field has a fiber structure, as postulated by any form of ether string theory, each unit of positive electricity being the origin and each unit of negative electricity being the termination of a Faraday tube. Wait, what is a Faraday tube? Is that like a line of force?
I'm
The force
almost
acting on
positive that's what it is.
then the force acting on one single electron between the plates of an air condenser cannot possibly vary continuously with the potential difference between the plates. Wait, what?
Yeah, Faraday
If a
tube is just like just describing that line of force of induction.
I see. He says that the force acting on one single electron cannot possibly vary continuously if a static electrical field has a fiber structure made of strings or, or lines of force. I don't understand why. Because it says each unit of positive electricity being the origin and each unit of negative electricity the termination of a Faraday tube. Oh, that's in a conception in which you have like a positive charge over here and a negative charge over there, and there's like a line connecting them. And so he says, therefore, the force acting on one single electron cannot vary continuously with the potential to why? If that doesn't it doesn't make sense to me. Why could the force not vary continuously as the potential difference, the voltage, varies continuously? You can change the voltage by any amount you want. Why would the force not vary by I don't get it. As if it like jumps to discrete values or something and skips numbers. Doesn't make sense.
No, you're not
Everything's
allowed.
continuous. Huh?
No, you're not allowed to do that.
I don't he says it, but I don't why. There's no explanation as to why would be the case here. He just I don't
Physics is hard, bro.
Well, he says he finds exact proport in the oil drop experiment. There's exact proportionality between whatever he makes the field strength to be and whatever the velocity on the oil drop is, which is proportional to its force, because the force is what determines the velocity. So he's like, the field strength and the force are proportional to each other, which is fine. That's what you would expect because the field is creating a force on the drop. When we maintain the field as a constant and we vary the charge on the drop, the granular structure of electricity is proved by the discontinuous changes in the velocity. Oh, because you can own, yeah, he's basically showing that charge itself, right? Charge itself is not continuous, right? Like we have like discrete amounts of charge. There's units of charge. The electron is the unit of charge. That's what he's showing. Okay. He's like, so when we try to bump up the charge by the smallest amount we can, we notice the velocity always jumps to certain values. Like we always measure certain jumps of force. It's not like we don't hit the numbers in between. That's because when we add charge, we can't add like 1.7 charges. We have to add one charge or two. There's like whole number charges. Okay. But when we maintain the charge constant and we vary the field, the lack of discontinuous change in the velocity and otherwise, in other words, when we maintain the charge as a constant and we vary the field, the velocity changes continuously. He says the lack of discontinuous change. I don't know why he doesn't just say the continuous change instead of lack of discontinuous change. It's such a weird way to write that. When we vary the field, but maintain the charge constant, the continuous change in the velocity disproves the contention of a fibrous structure in the field unless the assumption be made that there are an enormous number of ether strings ending in one electron. Such an assumption takes all the virtue out of an ether string. I see. Okay. That was based on like the 1830s idea that like whatever an electron is, there's like this one line, this one string traveling from point to point, exerting force, and that's what results in a charge or whatever. But that's like I feel like he's arguing against a very like one particular conception of a quote unquote ether string model. And I'm not even like I don't even know if I would agree with the quote unquote ether string model because it's like this idea that the lines of force are uh what I would call it singular, I guess. But if a field is continuous, then I don't it's hard to quantize the ether string. Like we can quantize the charge, I suppose, like the electrons, but ether is so much smaller and thinner than that. It's not like I don't see why there would be a reason to believe it's 1 to 1, like one ether string per one electron or whatever.
Yeah.
That's
That's a
that's probably like
that's a
their
fair
first
point.
idea.
That's a fair
Yeah.
point, and yeah, that was probably their first base assumption. And I bet you the calculations on that would be a lot easier than doing multiple strings per electron.
Yeah, I mean, and they're just using the word string. I mean, right? Like there's a line of force through a fluid or whatever, right? But that line of
Right.
force, I mean, you could consider that like a fluid column. That fluid column doesn't have to be treated as like a quote unquote one line, nor like because basically you're trying to say that it's a singular unit in the same way that the electron's a singular unit, and if you treat it as a singular unit, the math doesn't work. But there's no reason that it has to be 1 to 1 just because one electron has one singular unit that it has to also have one singular unit of ether. There could be a corresponding number of many. If let's just presume that the ether is quantized. I'm not saying it is, but like if you were to treat it like it is, because they really like things to be quantized. If you were to presume that the ether could be quantized and that these lines in it, these lines of force being transmitted through the ether could be quantized, there's absolutely no reason to presume that one electron matches up with one ether string. Like, like I said before, I'm kind of going saying it again, but if the ether's much thinner, then it would be like there'd be a large number of ether strings corresponding to one electron, and then for a different particle, like a proton or a neutron, I'm sure there would be, a different number of ether strings. Like they'd all have like their own corresponding number in order to, make this amount of force or whatever it is. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I, I don't see any reason that it would be 1 to 1. That would make less sense for me to think that it would be 1 to 1, like one electron for one line, or one quantized line, right? Because I'm sure that I mean there it is one line if you want to think of it just like how you trace the force, but that line could be broken down further, whereas that electron cannot. And he says an assumption that you could have an enormous number of ether strings. I guess he's talking about breaking the line of force down into smaller chunks. He says such an assumption takes all the virtue out of an ether string theory. Why? Why does it take the virtue out of it? I don't understand. It takes the virtue out of it for you to think that there's like a fluid medium that's thinner than the electron is. Like that's all that it would mean, that it's smaller than the electron. Still a fluid field.
No virtue here, bro.
Interesting. But then he says that's the part that Millikan was, or he was referencing, dude was referencing in Millikan, that the physical theory, despite the apparently complete success of the Einstein equation, the physical theory of which it was designed to be the symbolic expression is found so untenable that Einstein himself, I believe, no longer holds to it. He's talking about the photoelectric effect equation, right?
Yeah.
We're in the position of having built a very perfect structure and then knocked out entirely the underpinning. So, like, I guess what they're saying is when we math it out, we find the quantization of electrons to be, you know, a real thing, but we don't have a physical mechanism as to how or why. So they were really convinced in like this wave nature of stuff at this point in time. And electrons were charges, and they were trying to like think about them being made of like electric fluid or ether strings or whatever, right? Mixture of ether and matter, brute matter. I'd have to read the rest of the book in order to, because the next section, this is in the chapter called The Nature of Radiant Energy. The next section is attempts toward a solution. Hmm. Wow. This next page is pretty cool, dude. You should check the link.
Oh, I got it. Does that have the full book on it?
Uh, Seems to be mostly full.
Yeah, it seems like it. Nice. I'll add it to the collection. 'Cause that one I added is a little different. Mhm. All right, I got them both on there now. Thank you, sir.